Have you ever heard that we use only 10% of our brain? This is one of the most persistent and fascinating myths about the human mind. The idea that we have 90% of untapped potential is exciting, but the truth is quite different, and even more amazing. In reality, the human brain is so complex that we don't need superpowers to be impressed by what it can do. In this video, we'll uncover the origins of the 10% brain myth, what science actually says about how much of our brain we use, and how every part of it plays a role in our daily lives. We'll also explore how this myth has influenced popular culture and reveal surprising facts about the true power of the human mind. Get ready to uncover the truth behind this myth and, perhaps, see your own brain in a whole new light. Let's dive in. Where did the 10% brain myth come from? The idea that we use only 10% of our brain is one of the biggest misconceptions about how the human mind works. Despite being debunked by science, it remains a popular belief, inspiring movies, books, and even misconceptions about human potential. But where exactly did this persistent myth originate? The exact origins of the myth are unclear, but many trace it back to the early 20th century. One commonly cited source is psychologist and philosopher William James, who suggested that most people only tap into a fraction of their mental potential. While James never mentioned 10%, this interpretation was later linked to his ideas. Others believe the myth was fueled by misinterpretations of neurological studies from that era. In the 1920s and 1930s, advances in neuroscience began mapping the brain, and scientists noticed that not all areas were well understood. This lack of understanding led to the mistaken assumption that these regions were inactive, contributing to the idea that much of the brain was unused. The media amplified these early misinterpretations, embedding the 10% myth into public imagination. Another factor that bolstered the myth was the use of electroencephalograms, EEGs, which measure electrical activity in the brain. Early experiments seemed to show little to no activity in certain areas at specific times. However, these studies didn't account for the brain's dynamic nature. Different areas activate depending on what's needed. This limited understanding at the time helped perpetuate the false idea that only a small portion of the brain is in use. Popular culture played a critical role in spreading the myth. Self-help books in the mid-20th century, such as those by Dale Carnegie, latched onto the idea that we only use a fraction of our potential. Decades later, movies like Lucy, 2014, and Limitless, 2011, reinforced the false notion that accessing 100% of the brain could unlock superhuman abilities. While entertaining, these stories lack any scientific basis. As compelling as the 10% myth may be, it's far from the truth. Modern science has proven that we use virtually all parts of the brain, even during simple activities. But how exactly do scientific studies debunk this idea? That's what we'll explore in the next section. What does science say about using 100% of our brain? Science has made it clear. The myth that we only use 10% of our brain is entirely false. Modern research, utilizing advanced tools like functional magnetic resonance imaging, fMRI, has revealed that the human brain is constantly active, even during simple tasks or at rest. Virtually all brain areas have specific roles, contributing to the overall functioning of our body and mind. One of the strongest arguments against the myth comes from studies on brain damage. If we only use 10% of our brain, injuries to other parts wouldn't cause significant issues. However, even minor damage to specific areas can lead to severe impacts on motor skills, emotions, or cognition. This demonstrates that nearly the entire brain is essential for our survival and quality of life. Another compelling point is the brain's energy consumption. It accounts for roughly 20% of the body's oxygen and glucose use, even though it represents only 2% of our body weight. It would be a massive evolutionary waste for 90% of the brain to remain inactive while consuming so much energy. This high metabolic demand indicates that every region of the brain has an important role, even if we're not consciously aware of it. The brain operates as an interconnected system. For example, the prefrontal cortex handles planning and decision-making, while the motor cortex controls movement. Even seemingly simple activities, like walking or talking, activate multiple brain regions simultaneously. This highlights the brain's dynamic, networked nature, where no part sits idle. Interestingly, the brain remains active even during sleep. During REM sleep, for instance, it processes memories, regulates emotions, and organizes the day's learning. This proves that the brain works in its entirety, even in states of rest or apparent inactivity. Modern neuroscience completely debunks the 10% myth. Every part of the brain serves a purpose, and ongoing research continues to uncover just how efficient and dynamic this organ truly is. But how exactly does the brain activate in our daily lives? Which regions come into play during our everyday activities? Let's explore that in the next section. How different brain areas activate. Throughout the day, the human brain is a true multitasking powerhouse. In daily life, it activates different regions simultaneously and in coordination, even for simple actions. Each area has a specific role, but they work together seamlessly to process information, make decisions, and control the body. This dynamic functionality enables you to think, feel, move, and interact with the world all at once. For instance, consider a common activity like cooking. Multiple brain areas are activated at the same time. The motor cortex controls the movements of your hands and arms as you chop ingredients. The visual cortex interprets what you see, and the hippocampus helps you recall the recipe. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex handles planning and task execution, while the limbic system may generate emotions tied to the smell or anticipation of the meal. Another example is verbal communication, which requires several brain regions to work in harmony. Broca's area, located in the frontal lobe, is responsible for speech production, while Wernicke's area in the temporal lobe processes language comprehension. At the same time, the motor cortex coordinates the muscle movements needed for speaking, and the auditory system decodes the sounds you hear. Even seemingly passive activities like watching a movie demand collaboration across various brain areas. The visual cortex processes the images on the screen, the limbic system interprets the character's emotions, and the auditory cortex deciphers sounds and music. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex connects the events of the storyline, and the hippocampus stores critical details to follow the plot. Interestingly, even rest engages important brain regions. During relaxation or meditation, the default mode network, DMN, becomes active. This network is responsible for introspection, autobiographical memory, and future planning. This proves that even when we're not performing physically or mentally demanding tasks, the brain remains highly active. The brain is almost entirely engaged throughout the day, debunking the idea that large portions of it remain unused. Every task, no matter how small, requires precise coordination between multiple areas. But if we use so much of our brain, why does the myth of the 10% persist? Part of the answer lies in its impact on culture and entertainment, a topic we'll delve into next. The impact of this myth on culture and entertainment. The myth that we only use 10% of our brain has become so popular that it has deeply influenced culture and entertainment. From movies and books to motivational talks, the idea has been used to inspire people to unlock their hidden potential. While scientifically incorrect, the myth continues to captivate the collective imagination, especially because of the promise of extraordinary mental abilities. One of the most famous examples in cinema is the movie Lucy, 2014, starring Scarlett Johansson. The plot revolves around a woman who, after unlocking 100% of her brain, gains superpowers like telekinesis and infinite knowledge. Although a work of fiction, the movie reinforced the false idea that we use only a small fraction of our brain, perpetuating the myth to millions of viewers. Another popular example is the movie Limitless, 2011. where the protagonist takes a pill that allows him to access his brain's full potential, making him extraordinarily intelligent and successful. These stories are fascinating because they tap into a universal desire to exceed our own limits. However, they rely on a flawed premise and create unrealistic expectations about how the human mind functions. Self-help books have also played a significant role in spreading this myth. Works like Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins and other motivational approaches often use the concept of untapped potential to encourage life changes. While the encouragement is positive, science shows that we already use our brain to its full extent. The real challenge lies in training and optimizing it, not unlocking hidden parts. The myth of the 10% has even inspired conspiracy theories and pseudoscience. Some people believe that using 100% of the brain would unlock abilities like mind reading or premonitions. Despite the lack of scientific evidence for such claims, these ideas continue to spark curiosity and find an audience, especially in online content. The cultural impact of the 10% myth is undeniable, but it also highlights our fascination with human potential. The truth is that the brain is already incredibly powerful, even without superpowers. And in reality, there are many scientifically proven, fascinating facts about the brain that go far beyond this myth. Let's explore these in the next section. Fascinating facts about the brain's true capacity. While the 10% myth is false, the brain's real capabilities are even more impressive. The human brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons, each capable of forming thousands of connections, creating an extraordinarily complex neural network. This interconnectivity allows the brain to process information, store memories, and make decisions in fractions of a second, even in challenging situations. One of the brain's most fascinating features is its neuroplasticity, the ability to adapt and form new connections throughout life. This means that even in adulthood, the brain can learn, change, and reorganize itself. This adaptability is why people can recover from brain injuries, learn new languages, or master complex skills like playing a musical instrument. Another incredible fact is that the brain remains active even during sleep. While you rest, your brain works to consolidate memories, process emotions, and organize the day's learnings. During REM sleep, for example, it creates mental simulations that aid problem-solving and creativity. This constant activity shows that the brain never switches off, reinforcing that we use its full capacity at different times. The brain is also remarkably efficient at multitasking. For instance, while walking and having a conversation, several brain regions coordinate movements, process language, and maintain balance simultaneously. This efficiency is made possible by how the brain distributes tasks among specialized areas, functioning like a perfectly synchronized team. In addition, the brain is incredibly fast and powerful. It can process information at speeds of up to 120 meters per second, enabling near instantaneous reactions. This speed is critical for tasks like driving or catching a falling object. Even at rest, the brain performs trillions of calculations per second, managing vital functions such as breathing, heart rate, and digestion. The human brain is an extraordinary machine that far exceeds the 10% myth. It demonstrates incredible feats, from solving complex problems to creating art and technological innovations. With ongoing scientific advancements, we continue to uncover more about this fascinating organ and how to train it to reach its full potential. After all, the brain's true power lies in its ability to adapt and evolve. A capacity driven not by myths, but by knowledge and practice. Now you know that the 10% of the brain idea is exactly that, a myth. Science proves that we use virtually every part of our brain throughout the day, with each region performing essential functions for our survival and development. And even without superpowers or unlocked areas, the human mind remains one of nature's most fascinating creations. But what about you? Have you ever believed the 10% myth, or know someone who still does? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Did you learn something new about the brain's true potential? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to keep exploring the mysteries of the human body and mind with us. See you in the next video. Until then,